Welcome to Overturned Academy. What people ask me very often is something like, how did you discover that you can do this? And then I tell them, well, I didn't discover it. I just discovered that I find it fascinating and that I'm interested in it. And then I decided to start learning. So did many, many people before me. So I invite you now to dive with me a little bit into the history of overtone singing and throat singing. Most of the infos I will be talking about in this video I got from a very substantial book written by Mark van Tongeren. It is called Overtone Singing, Physics and Metaphysics in East and West. And I can really recommend it to everybody who is interested more in the details and the technique and the history and everything surrounding this fascinating singing technique. It is currently possible to order it very inexpensively on Mark's website. For almost everything I am talking about in this video, I will put you links right into the video, and you will also find all information and links in the description below the video so that you can check out everything that seems to be interesting for you. Just listening to me talking about it won't give you the full impression or information, as it is mostly about music. And music has to be listened to, it has to be experienced. There are two main categories. One is the Western style of overtone singing. This is quite new, as it has developed in the last century only, and the people that worked with it, they knew nothing about the traditional throat singing styles. And the other thing is the Central Asian techniques of throat singing. There's a big variety of techniques. It is very old, very ancient and traditional, and also amazing, wonderful music. The traditional styles are from the region of Tuva, that is a part of Siberia, and also Mongolia. The main differences between the two techniques is in the Western style of overtone singing, we work with a quite classical approach to the singing voice. This leaves a lot of flexibility in changing techniques, so I can go from overtone singing to classical singing and back, and it also enables the possibility of switching fundamentals and singing polyphonic. In the Eastern styles, they have a very guttural sound, a very pressed phonation. They usually play some sort of traditional fiddles and plucked instruments where they accompany their singing with. First, about Tuvan throat singing. There is a big variety of styles and techniques. The most popular ones are Zügit, Kömi, and Kargura. And Kömi is often used as an umbrella term for all techniques. Zügit is kind of close to the Western style of overtone singing, but with a lot of pressure. And Kargura is a totally different technique where the voice drops for an octave. Tuva is a republic in the south of central Siberia, and throat singing is also popular in parts of Mongolia. And there, between Tuva and Mongolia, the culture is quite similar, and the music is as well. But the instruments are a bit different. In former times, most of Tuvan men were hunters or herdsmen or traders. And singing was really a natural outdoor activity. So whenever they were outside and taking care for their animals, for example, they were just singing to express their feelings, or also to imitate nature and animal sounds and sounds of nature. Also, throat singing is linked very much to shamanism and is also used to calm down and comfort animals, for example, or women while they are giving birth. The Tuvan throat singing is very often accompanied by typical traditional instruments. There are plucked instruments similar to a banjo and also fiddles, but totally different names and shapes, of course. And in Mongolia, they have a traditional instrument called the morinkur. It's a horse-headed fiddle, and with that one, the musicians often also imitate sounds of horses. People usually learn throat singing as children, so they start learning very often at the age of 2 already, and they learn from their fathers or uncles or other close relatives. And it is very seldomly happening that somebody starts learning with the age of 20 or so. All the pictures here I got from Hosso. He's an absolutely amazing Mongolian throat singer. About women in throat singing, it is not really in the tradition of throat singing that it is something that women do, but there are some female throat singers existing. They do perform the traditional styles, they are absolutely able to do it, and they are also performing and giving concerts. It's just not very many of them compared to the men. In the late 1980s, world music started to become very popular in the West, and in 1990 an album was released, Tuva, Voices from the Center of Asia, and it was the first commercial record sold in the West with the real traditional Tuvan throat singing music. As there was the Iron Curtain until 1991, until there it was really difficult for foreigners to enter Tuva, so until then very little was known about the culture and music. And after the Iron Curtain dropped, the Tuva ensemble from South Siberia could go on tour in America and Europe. Sometime after that, Hunhue 2 formed as an ensemble, and they are still touring and playing concerts today. Nowadays, the music scene in Tuva and Mongolia has changed, so in the capitals there are music universities where it is also possible to study throat singing or horse-headed fiddle, for example. And there are also many singing competitions existing where people meet up and find out who is the best throat singer around or who is the best throat singer of the country. About the history of overtone singing in the West. The field is actually very wide, so there would be many names and people that should definitely be mentioned here in the video, but I will focus just on a few that were important in developing the technique. So that way you can get a quick and rough overview about the topic. The Western style of overtone singing started to develop in the 1960s only, and those people experimenting with it were coming after the minimal music movement, and they were interested in synthesizers and the first electronic music. And from playing around with the technical possibilities, they also found approach to the voice and trying to do similar things there, like filtering sound. And that way they discovered overtone singing. Something really funny happened actually a lot earlier. So the first existing recording of overtone singing is from an American singer-songwriter called Arthur Miles, and the recording is from 1927 already. So he probably somehow figured out the technique himself, and the music is really funny. It's an American country song, and he's singing normal, he's then singing the melody in overtones, and he's also doing yodeling. He didn't really leave any written traces in music history, but became some kind of a local celebrity with one album that got released. When the Western style of overtone singing started to develop, it was connected to the contemporary music scene of that time. So Karl-Heinz Stockhausen from Germany was the first one writing for vocal harmonics in musical scores, and before him Lamonte Young experimented already with vocal harmonics. The piece of Stockhausen called Stimmung was performed for the first time in 1968, and it has specifically written vowel overtones in the sheet music. In the 1950s, Stockhausen was working in an electronic music studio, and there he probably discovered harmonics in the sound and tried to do it with his own voice then. Tran Quang Hai is a Vietnamese musician, teacher, researcher, and ethnomusicologist living in Paris. He received very early field recordings of throat singing music, and he listened to it so much that at some point he could figure out how it is done and learned it by himself. Apart from his work as a performer, he contributed a lot to the field of overtone singing in scientific research and education as well. Tran Quang Hai and Hugo Zemp created together a documentary movie. It's called The Sound of Harmonics, where they searched for the mechanisms of overtone singing. The both of them together developed for the first time the concept of one cavity technique versus two cavity technique based on physiological research. In the 70s, vocal harmonics slowly started to become popular among circles of people experimenting with sounds. So those young composers and singers and performers tried out literally everything a human voice is capable of doing sound-wise, and they called it extended vocal techniques, and overtone singing is one of those. Meredith Monk worked with overtone singing, and Greek singer Demetrios Stratos published his album Cantare la Voce in 1978 with truly amazing sounds of the human voice. By the early 1980s, some singers had reached such a good control over their overtone singing technique that they could really create specific melodies with it. And two of them defined the Western style of overtone singing. One is Michael Vetter from Germany, and the other one, David Hikes from America. Michael Vetter also collaborated with Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. He gave many workshops and developed a didactic system for teaching overtone singing. And of course, he performed and gave many, many concerts. In 1975, David Hikes formed the Harmonic Choir in New York, and they published an absolutely amazing album, Hearing Solar Winds. It became quite popular, and it is still absolutely worth listening to. During the 1980s, many groups started to form and meet for chanting, overtone singing, or reciting mantras. They were more interested in using sound for meditation or healing purposes, so they were absolutely not very interested in music or in achieving good technical skills in overtone singing. Because of that, overtone singing became very much associated with New Age, and because of this, again, composers were less and less interested in it, and it moved more in the meditation and more out of the music. And luckily, this is changing again today. Today, many vocalists use overtone singing, composers are writing for it, and also Western people are very interested in the Central Asian throat singing styles and learn it or try to be as authentic in it as they can be. Other Western people prefer to stick with the Western overtone singing technique. And on the other hand, in Mongolia, for example, the musicians became a bit familiar with the Western tonal system and harmonic system, and also the West is influencing the traditional Tuvan and Mongolian music, especially if those musicians are also touring in the West. Also, more and more composers have been writing for the technique, more singers and musicians learn it. Overtone choirs have been founded in different places, and overtone singing is used in all kinds of music and genres you can imagine. Regarding composers, really interesting for me is the work of Toby Twining. He composed the Chrysalid Requiem for choir and overtone singing. It was first performed in 1999, and the music is touching me very much whenever I hear it. And it is really contemporary, but also groovy, and I really love it. I also love the compositions and recordings of Bert Hershey with his ensemble Prana. especially their album The Eternal Embrace. I have been listening to it now for so many years, and it is still a huge inspiration for me. You can also take a look at Stuart Hines' work and website. He has written many compositions for overtone choir, but also for polyphonic solo voice, and also exercises of how to learn polyphonic overtone singing to be able to perform the more complex pieces. Important for my own learning and teaching is the didactics and research of Wolfgang Saus. He's constantly coming up with really interesting things and facts all around overtone singing, and he's also publishing a lot of it on his website. It's mostly in German. You can get a deeper impression about some of the people I was talking about in this video, and also about some of the people I missed talking about. There is a wonderful documentary movie by Minghao Xu called Space, Sound, Voice, and it is available for free and in full length on YouTube. There are interviews with David Hikes, Wolfgang Saus, Hosso and Transmongolia, Christian Bollmann, Jill Peirce, and Mark van Tongeren, who wrote this amazing book about overtone singing in East and West. All infos and links about everything I have been talking about you will find in the description in the order of their appearance in this video. If you're interested to learn overtone singing yourself, please take a look at my teaching website, overtone.academy. There you can find all my video workshop tutorials and also the dates and possibility to sign up for group Zoom classes. Enjoy!